New Scotland Yard, London, England, an address that is known worldwide. Headquarters of the Metropolitan Police, guardians of the capital city against crime. In the marbled lobby, an eternal flame burns in memory of those members of the civil staff who have given their lives in both world wars, together with a book of honour in which is recorded the names of police officers who have lost their lives in the course of duty. And in a quiet corner of the building, a place where legend becomes fact that I would like to tell you about. But it is for the Deputy Commissioner to invite you in.
Here in the Yard is one of the police museums that many have heard of, but few have visited. It's an unusual museum and started life in 1875, when it was decided to keep certain items of property seized in connection with crime to instruct the young detectives of the then relatively new Detective Department of Scotland Yard. It was not too long before the press gave this collection of somewhat macabre artifacts the unofficial title of the Black Museum. And so it's remained over the years, exhibiting the darker side of human nature, instructing the professional policeman and the lawyer, and intriguing the layman by its very name and remoteness. We've never opened the doors of the Black Museum to the general public, and all visits have been by way of invitation and always highly prized. The exhibits range from the apparently insignificant to the spectacular, and from the hardly known to the infamous, whose names are known throughout the world. They have in common one thing: supreme importance to the history of crime and the criminal, as you will see.
Heads you win, tails I lose, could have been the motto of James Steele, whose photograph stands in the forgery section of the Black Museum. A skilled forger all his life, but at the age of 80 retired from the game, until in 1964 some metal strips from the suppliers to the Royal Mint came into his hands. James couldn't resist the temptation. Out came his old forger's workbench, and into circulation went forged 2-shilling pieces, equivalent to 10 pence in today's coinage. Indistinguishable from the real thing, except, do you know how many cuts there are in the milled edge of a 2-shilling piece? No, neither did James. He was too short, which was why he found himself facing a judge who, with some irony, sentenced him to 2 years' imprisonment. But he didn't even serve that. On grounds of ill health, they let him go. The 2 men who forged these dollar bills 7 years later were sentenced to a somewhat longer time in jail. But that time has been served, the debt paid to society, so we'll just call them simply Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones and concentrate on the crime. They developed an offset lithographic printing process whereby they could print $20 and $50 bills that were virtually undetectable from the real thing. It was only a tip-off that samples were circulating amongst international criminal circles looking for big buyers that sent the counterfeit currency squad at Scotland Yard into action. Ironically, months of inquiries worldwide brought them back to England to raid a house on the outskirts of London belonging to one Charles Smith. They recovered 85,000 of the forged bills, but they still had to find the press. And who was the printer? Strange noises from the garage of an ex-printer, James Jones, sent them on their second raid. The garage had a false front. Inside, the printing press that they were looking for, plus 3.5 million newly printed dollars. But the investigation couldn't end there. Printing plates they had, but where were the all-important negatives from which the plates were made? Many more plates could be made up if they weren't found. James Jones' house was dismantled. No negatives. Smith's house, same treatment. Cupboards, floorboards, walls even. Until a young, keen-eyed detective noticed that this door and its frame had been newly painted, but the hinges were clean. Off came the door, revealing a metal plate along the bottom. Off came the plate, and out came the all-important negatives, foiling the consortium's plan to manufacture 2 million counterfeit dollars a month. At the Old Bailey on the 5th of January 1979, Smith, the ringleader, was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, Jones, the printer, 3. And the young detective, well, he too shall remain anonymous.